Welcome to Literary and Jury Charge Practice. Let's start out with some jury charge. Ready? Here we go. In his petition for rehearing, plaintiff asserted that the question of the relationship between himself and Rose was first raised by this court, and he undertook to convince us that we were in error in our conclusion that plaintiff was at best a licensee. While still maintaining that he was a business invitee of Rose, he apparently contends that defendant had the same duty toward him if he were a licensee or trespasser as he would have had toward an invitee. He cites and quotes from Fenner v. Consumer Fisheries and Fenner v. Local Bridge Company. These were cases of active negligence. In the first case, the injury occurred when a truck was started up while the plaintiff was holding onto the door handles. In the second case, the plaintiff was injured when he was struck by two heavy steel ribs, which were knocked over by the arm of a crane, which was being used by the defendant to remove the ribs. In each case, it was stated that active and not passive negligence was involved. Grimes v. Valley Telephone Company, also cited by plaintiff, was a case in which the defendant was held liable for injuries sustained by Grimes when the wheel of a cart he was driving was caught by a guy wire stretched across a commonly used roadway. Plaintiff's contention that Rose owed him a duty to keep the premises in a reasonably safe condition consists of mere assertions unsupported by applicable authority. There are other well-settled principles which are pertinent to the question of defendant's duty toward the public. One is that a possessor of land has no duty toward persons who come upon the land to change the method of his operations, which are carried on so openly as to be obvious to all observers. Another is that one who enters an uncompleted building takes the risk of using the premises in the condition in which he finds them. The reasons for this rule make it applicable not only to the interior of a building but also to the immediately surrounding area with respect to conditions of the surface caused by the presence of materials deposited thereon in the course of the work of construction and which are not hidden from view. Plaintiff stood by day after day, fully aware of the manner in which debris was being thrown from the pit onto the surrounding surface. Defendant had no duty to discontinue that practice. Plaintiff had no right to expect that the premises would be cleaned up each day as Rose's workmen left the job, and Rose had no duty to see that they were cleaned up. The claim of negligence in failing to barricade the pitfalls for the reasons previously stated. An additional ground of untenability would be that plaintiff had actual knowledge of the existence of the pit and therefore could not complain of the absence of a barrier as a warning of its presence. It is unnecessary to discuss other contentions of defendant. The judgment is reversed with instructions to enter judgment for defendant. Right, now for some literary practice. This is called The Easy Road to Success. Ready? When he applied for a job as a cartoonist, he was told he lacked imagination and had no good ideas. He became a pioneer in the animation industry and went on to create an empire worth at the time of his death $80 million. Did you guess Walt Disney? This director, producer, and screenwriter was rejected by the University of Southern California School of Cinematic Arts multiple times. Now Steven Spielberg is considered one of the most popular directors and producers in Hollywood. This author's first book was rejected in 27 different publishers. He's the writer who penned whimsical children's books, including my favorite, Oh, the Places You'll Go. That was Theodore Seuss Geisel, better known as Dr. Seuss. This songbird with an amazing voice was dropped by her record label after only 3 months. Not only was Lady Gaga's debut album a critical and commercial success, but Her second album topped the charts in more than 20 countries and sold 1 million copies in its first week. The most inspiring examples for me come from the world of sports. The 2016 National Basketball Association's most valuable player, Stephen Curry of the Golden State Warriors, made about 50% of his field goal attempts. What? He missed 50% of the time and he's still MVP? The Sultan of Swat hit 714 home runs in his career. His career batting average is .342, which means that Babe Ruth didn't get a hit more than 60% of the time he was at bat. It is how these people dealt with failure that made the difference. They didn't give up. They made the failure work for them, or they worked harder to achieve success. Are you the same? Maybe you're working on your next speed level or a new certification. Perhaps you want to try a new marketing approach for your business. It could be that you want to try a different type of reporting, making the switch to captioning or freelancing. Are you looking to take a harder assignment? One that requires real-time or same-day delivery or complex litigation in a foreign country? Knowing how to manage possible failure along your journey will make the difference in achieving your goals. First, do not let failure define you. Experiencing a failure does not make you a failure. We all have to deal with hurdles. The attempt is what failed. You, however, are bound for success. Second, let go of the disappointment. This can be difficult. Many times we hang on to the negative rather than embrace the positive. Haven't we all experienced that continual loop playing in our head? Stop playing that same loop over and over. Now back to some jury charge, and the subject of this jury charge is soil. Ready? Here we go. The weight of growing crops is composed mostly of water. Flow of water into the roots and out through the leaves is normal for most crops in carrying on growth processes. If water in the plant becomes deficient, either by excessive evaporation or by limited availability in the soil, the rate at which the plant can grow is decreased. Many factors control growth, such as nutritional elements in the soil and physical conditions in the whole plant environment, but water status within the plant is always a major factor and is often limiting. The availability of water to plants is influenced by two force actions. Water is pulled into soil pores just like ink is pulled into a blotter. The bony framework or matrix of the soil is made up of solid mineral particles. Water is strongly attracted to and is held on the surface of the soil matrix. This holding action of soil for water is measured in terms of the suction required to get water back out of the soil and is referred to as matrix suction. When soil is saturated with water, the solid and the liquid occupy about equal parts of the bulk volume. As the soil dries out, the bulk volume does not change much, but part of the water is replaced by air. Another holding action for water in soil comes from dissolved salt. Dissolved salt particles, or solute particles as they are called, are always present in the soil suction. They have attraction for water and oppose the absorption of water by plant roots. This osmotic action is referred to as solute suction. The intensity of these two force actions determines the suction that must be overcome before plant roots can take in water. The total suction of soil water is the sum of matrix suction and solute suction. Soil is composed of many fine particles and present an extensive wetting surface. 1 pound of sandy soil may have 3 acres of surface area, while a pound of clay soil can have as much as 25 acres of surface area. Soil can contain a relatively large amount of water, and yet all the water will lie in a thin film that is held tightly on the surface of the soil particles. Matrix suction is a measure of the tenacity with which water is held on the soil surface and depends on the thickness of the water film. As water is removed from soil, the film becomes thinner, and great suction is required to plant roots to remove water from the soil. try some more literary practice. And this is called The Mind, Body, and Soul Connection. Ready? The reporting profession is all about the spoken word. However, as a mental health counselor, I hear the stories of individuals who have struggled with some of life's most challenging issues and strive to help them find balance and peace in their lives. I wanted to offer some of the ways to tap into that balance in life that is so essential to finding inner peace and joy. Let's face it, with the deadlines, stressors, and fast-paced life, we often neglect the most important component of balance, ourselves. This article will provide what I hope will be meaningful tools and ideas for identifying what balance might look like in your life and how to find that balance in a fast-paced, chaotic life. Taking the first step. Before you can begin to bring balance into your own life, evaluate how you spend your days. I suggest learning to be mindful of each day and each breath. While this seems simple and fairly straightforward, mindfulness is a practice just like exercise, eating healthy, and relaxing. Being mindful of what we need to do and actually doing it can be two different things. We often race from one task to another, only to realize at the end of the day that we took zero time for ourselves. Being mindful means having a conscious awareness of the moment while paying close attention to your body and what it is saying to you while living that moment. How often do you stop during the day to take a deep breath and just pay attention to what your body is telling you? Is your heart racing? Consider if your chest feels tight or if your shoulders approach your ears and lead to pain in the neck, back, and shoulders, or if there is numbness in your feet or hands. Once you notice, take 2 or 3 deep breaths in and out. While breathing in, focus on breathing in peace or calm, and while breathing out, focus on releasing anxiety or stress. This is especially helpful when writing for long periods of time in the sitting position. Mindfulness comes into play in every facet of our lives, being mindful of ourselves, our words, our actions, our surroundings, and yes, our very lives is also a remarkable tool to help us slow down, stop the racing, and enjoy the only thing that is given in this life, and that is this moment. I would challenge each of you to take 2 or 3 moments each day to stop long enough to think about your bodies, your breathing, and to acknowledge the beauty of breath. We often forget our breath is the lifeline to not only another moment, but if we are lucky, to another day. I would also encourage you to research mindfulness and learn all of the ways that you can enhance your life by being more mindful of many other facets of our life, what you eat, how you spend your time, and so on. It is also an amazing tool to evaluate your thoughts and to spend some time really focusing on what your brain is telling you about yourself, others, and life. Back to some more jury charge practice. Again, the subject of this jury charge is soil. Ready? Here we go. Matrix suction is negligible in saturated soil, but increases continuously as the soil dries. A day or two after thorough irrigation, the matrix solution in a well-drained soil is usually in the range of 5 to 15 centibars. When a non-saline soil becomes dry enough to cause crops to wilt, the matrix suction may be in the range of 10 to 20 bars. The soil moisture Tensiometer is an instrument that can be used to measure matrix suction up to about 85 centibars. It consists of a vacuum gauge connected to a porous cup that is buried in the soil. The instrument is kept full of water during use. Soil moisture tensiometers have long been used in agricultural research. They are now commercially available and are widely used by farmers to tell when to irrigate. Tensiometers cover only about 1/10 of the matrix suction range in which plants grow well, but when properly placed in the root zone, they cover the range that is economically important for most irrigated crops. Higher values of matrix suction can be measured with instruments that depend on electrical and thermal conductance. Root membranes can connect with the soil solution, absorb the water more readily than the salt. Water molecules pass through the membranes, but the salt is mostly screened out and left behind in the soil. Extra suction is required in the root to separate water from the additional binding action that occurs when soil contains soluble salts. Water entry into roots is restricted by the solute suction of the soil solution. Solute suction depends not alone on the amount of salt in the soil, but also on the amount of water in the soil at the same time. For example, on a dry weight basis, a sandy soil may have a water content of 8% a day or 2 following irrigation. This may be reduced to 4% by root extraction. On the other hand, a fine textured soil may have a water content of 40% a few days following irrigation, and this may later be reduced to 20% by root action. Thus, for the field moisture range, the fine textured soil could contain 5 times as much water as the sandy soil. This means that fine soil could have 5 times as much salt on a dry weight basis as a sandy soil, and yet would have the same concentration of salt in the soil solution and would have the same solute suction. Let's take a look at some of these words. Tensiometers. 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 Irrigate. Non-saline. Membranes. Soluble. Soluble salts. Solute. Solute suction. So maybe some words to practice. We also had matrix suction. Soil particles. We will get back to that one. Let's try some more literary practice. Back to our article called The Easy Road to Success. Here we go. Next, learn from the mistake. What went wrong? Make a plan to adapt. When an athlete is not performing at the top of their game, they evaluate their swing, follow through, shooting form, focus, anything that impacts their performance. Then they take action to correct it. Adopt a positive attitude. J.K. Rowling said, "It is impossible to live without failing at something unless you live so cautiously that you might as well not have lived at all, in which case you fail by default. Give yourself a positive message. Keep trying." A sports statistic that I find amazing is something called shots on goal in hockey. It is the number of times a shot is attempted to score a goal. As an example, the Pittsburgh Penguins, the 2016 Stanley Cup winners, averaged 34.5 shots on goal per game in their championship year, but they only averaged 3.5 goals a game. Seems a little lopsided, doesn't it? But the message is clear. You just keep shooting at the goal. Finally, don't forget to ask for assistance. Many times we forget to surround ourselves with people who can help. We can always learn from those who have already accomplished their goal. Let their enthusiasm empower you. Michael Jordan, the basketball legend, known for his gravity-defying abilities on the court, who has 6 NBA championship rings, said this: "I have missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I have lost almost 300 games. On 26 occasions I have been entrusted to take the game-winning shot, and I missed. I have failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed. So go out there and pass the next speed level. Get a new certification, market your business, try a new reporting career path, and don't be afraid to fail. Who knows, you may succeed. I'm cheering for you." And that will conclude our literary and jury charge practice.